Welcome to the walkthrough of frequently made mistakes that I observed while reviewing submissions for assignment 3A in CS 5254 in summer of 2023. First, make sure to document your code thoroughly. As always, code that's not documented simply won't be reviewed henceforth. Second, let's take a look at some things left over from the earlier assignments. This code won't execute here because there's no terminal operation, so make sure you put the terminal operation in here. Down here, this is a problem. Make sure that you check that the Palantiri parameter is non-null before proceeding as per the specification comment above. Now let's turn our attention to some issues that arose with assignment 3A solutions. So make sure that you use a method reference here instead of a lambda expression in begin being thread pool. There's also no need to use streams here at all. In particular, you don't need to use stream, map, collect. Just use for each on the list that's returned from get beings, and also make sure you use a method reference instead of a lambda expression. Down here, let's take a look at many problems with await completion of futures. A lot of people had unit tests that didn't work correctly or demonstrated the code didn't work correctly. So first of all, please convert this call to map to a call to filter, not map. And then once you do that, you can get rid of the call to filter here as long as you check to make sure that what's returned from this supplier and get call is non-null. So that'll streamline the code a bit. Some other things, please split this code into two intermediate operations. First using map and then using filter. The map should use the ExecutorCompletionService take in conjunction with the reset throw supplier get method. And in filter, you should use the being callable future or whatever you call it get in conjunction with throw supplier get and check for non-null. And in that case, you can remove this line. It doesn't need to be here. So let me just, I'll just leave it that way, but you need to get rid of this line once you do things correctly with map and filter as I just described them. Down here, please don't write code like this that runs off the right side of the screen. We've talked about this many times. Follow the conventions that I use when I comment the code. And also, please split this stream up into consecutive calls to map and filter, where the map handles completion service take and filter handles future get, as we described above. This code is not complete. Down here, another problem that you can just have one call to filter rather than filter followed by map. Take a look at the descriptions above for how to do that properly. Down here, make sure you don't fill in the undergrad portion, only fill in the graduate portion. There's no need to do the undergrad version. This code here is incorrect. Please use map and filter, but put the calls to rethrow supplier in each of them, passing in the appropriate method references. There's no need to use plus equal here. I'm not sure why this is happening. That is unnecessary. Just use equal. It doesn't hurt anything to do it this way, but you don't need to do it, or you probably shouldn't do it that way because it's confusing. And again, please split this one call to map into a call to map, which takes mCompletionService take as a method reference, and another call to filter, which takes future get, and then make sure you handle null values appropriately. Down here, this code is also incorrect. Please use filter, but put it in a call to rethrow supplier, passing the appropriate method reference rather than using the egregious try-catch stuff here, which is just complicated and confusing. Please replace this code again with a call to rethrow supplier, taking completion service take as a method reference parameter, and remove the call to, and then also call the future.get method separately in rethrow supplier in filter. And once you do that, you can remove the call to filter where future is not equal to null. That'll clean things up. Please rewrite this code to avoid using the curly brace block. There's no need to do that if you do the call correctly and check if it's null or not. Down here, please don't use range closed or ranged, but instead use getBeings.stream. Please replace the use of map to object then with map, since you'll be getting something that's not a primitive. Don't use filter with objects non-null here, but instead use filter along with rethrow supplier and future get as we described above. Don't use collect here. That is going to be unnecessarily memory consumptive, and replace the use of size with count instead. Down here, please don't use these horrible try-catch blocks. It makes the code very hard to read and doesn't provide any benefits. Instead, use rethrow supplier in both cases for map and filter. Down here, again, don't do range, use getBeings.stream. And please use map instead of mapped object then. Please use the method reference for executor completion service take and use rethrow supplier instead of the try catch. Down here, please use .filter instead of .map followed by .filter. And please also use count here instead of map to int and sum. So finally, we're out of the await completion of futures problems and looking into shutdown now. So there's a number of things I saw here. There's no need to use a loop in shutdown now. In fact, that'll cause problems with legitimate interrupts if you wanted to legitimately interrupt something. Instead, what you want to do is get rid of this try catch block and replace it with a call to rethrow runnable, and also make sure that you are going to block for longer than 1 second or 1 nanosecond, for God's sake. That will not be useful at all. You'll just sit there busy waiting. So make this something like long max value. That should be fine. And then finally down here, there should not be a call to await completion of futures in shutdown now. I'm not sure how on earth that got in there, but you need to use await termination on mExecutor via the techniques that I talked about up here. So that's the end of the walkthrough of frequently made mistakes that I saw for assignment 3A.